Hey, you guys, Latricia Morris, the brand revivalist and owner of Ox on Iron. I am so excited today to get to welcome Dr. Tanesha Lawrence. This woman is a family medicine practitioner, but also an ordained Christian minister and a life purpose coach. I am ecstatic to have you on. Tanesha, can you tell our guests a little bit more about you?
Hi, Latricia. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. It is truly an honor and a pleasure, and all of the work that you're doing. I just feel very blessed to be on. So, yes, as Latricia mentioned, I am a family medicine physician. I'm board certified in family medicine. I've been a physician for 20 years now. The 20 years
Oh
flew
my
off,
goodness.
believe it or not. But for the past 8 years, I've been working as an emergency room physician. So, kind of two
Wow.
sides of the same coin. Both professions, you see all spectrums of people, but on with family medicine, you see chronic care. Emergency medicine, you see acute care. Also, an ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Didn't plan that at all. Didn't really grow up in church, but God has a funny sense of humor. And when I rededicated my life back to Christ, He made it very clear that He wanted me to be in ministry. So that has been a wonderful adventure. As I said, very unexpected, but very fulfilling at the same time. And then I am also a certified life purpose coach. Part of my journey with the Lord is that He's shown me a lot about purpose. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And so those three things kind of comprise what I call my holistic healing ministry. So the
Mm.
Lord has designed me to be able to minister to a person's body, soul, and spirit. And so that's kind of who I am and how, most of my activity centers around those things.
I love that. And I love that here, like you're coming from a background of obviously being steeped in medical, working with people who are coming with all sorts of ailments, and especially with families in emergency care and all of that, which is that in itself is a lot. But then I love that you said, you know what, let's push pause and
Mm.
look at the whole person and how we can get the whole person well. Now, one of the things we didn't hit on that I'd love to hear more about is your book. So, you authored a book, correct?
Yes,
Ditching Abandonment. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
absolutely. I'm just going to show it really quick. It's bright yellow like my outfit today. But yes,
Perfect.
I released this book literally, wow, tomorrow, or no, 2 days from now will be 15 months since I released this book called Ditching
Mm.
Abandonment. And how it came about was I knew that, the Lord was showing me that He wanted me to write. I'm a decent writer, but I had another idea for a book, but God dropped in my spirit this particular book. And I think the reason why it came first because He was dealing with me and abandonment issues. And how I
Mm.
found out that I had abandonment issues was through a ministry called Soul Care. It's an inner healing ministry. So it deals with root issues from childhood, from broken relationships, broken families. And the Lord showed me, hey, you have abandonment issues. The caveat to this is that I never felt abandoned. I never felt
Mm.
abandoned by my family. I have a non traditional upbringing, but I was very well loved. And so it was this journey of the Lord showing me that because I grew up in a non traditional family and I didn't have an understanding as a child why I didn't have a traditional family, I had internal abandonment issues that I'd suffocated, but it was manifesting in my dysfunctional behavior. And that there's so many people, whether you've been abandoned in your marriage, meaning your spouse was unfaithful, you've gone through divorce, whether you grow up in a single parent household or a household where there are two parents together but one parent is emotionally unavailable. All of those things can lead to abandonment and some sort of dysfunctional behavior that we equate to being the norm, but it is not. And so this book really is to raise awareness about those issues, kind of like a survey, check the boxes to see if you fit into some of these things and then lead you into some early steps for healing.
Like you said earlier, God has a sense of humor, right? I find it fascinating how, and it's always and never, never apply, right? He doesn't always go about it this way. But I
Yeah.
find it humorous when he calls us to do a thing
Yeah.
that we're like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to figure this out myself. And he
Right.
uses it to teach you and to walk you through the process of
Yeah.
growing. Like, I remember years back.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the book So Long in Security from Beth Moore?
I've heard of it. I've never read it or seen
Okay, so I walked into a bookstore. I vividly remember walking into a bookstore downtown in a town in Arkansas. I walked into this bookstore and I saw it on the end cap. And my first thought was, my sister needs that book.
it.
And then here I was like, went about my business. And
Right.
then the pastor's wife at the church we were attending was like, hey, I want you to teach on Wednesday night Bible study. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to teach on? And she goes, so long in security. And I'm like, I'll pray about it and I'll think about it. And
Right.
girl, I cracked that thing open and I was like, I needed this book
Right.
because there was so much similar to what you were saying. It's like we can have these different issues
Yeah.
that are surfacing in our lives
Yeah.
and we don't realize that those things are the root. And I love that you're a physician that helps people with the things that they come to you like, oh, this hurts, this aches.
Yeah.
But that you're like, you know what, let's peel back the layers and see what's actually at the root of what's going on here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So good. Yeah. You really can't get full healing in anything until you get to the root. And so many times we try to band aid the symptoms, but you
Mm.
have to get to the root to get the complete healing.
So, what has been your journey into, like, you started off going into medical? What was it that prompted you to make the journey into ministry
Yeah.
and life purpose coaching? Like, what was the gap that you saw there?
Yes. So I knew from, wow, like elementary school, I was supposed to be a physician because people always ask me, how did you know? I just knew. I think the only other thing I thought at some point was, oh, maybe I'll be a pilot. I remember that in kindergarten. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a pilot. And I took a plane ride and I was like, no, I don't think I'm supposed to be a pilot. And then from then on, I knew I was supposed to be a physician. It wasn't even something that my parents pushed or anything like that. So I knew that internally. Ministry came, as I sort of mentioned, much later. I grew up in a household where my parents and my family are very moral, but I didn't see a strong relationship with Christ. We were good people. We, went to church maybe one Sunday a month, holidays. I got more into church a little bit when I was younger through my childhood best friend. Her parents were pastors and leaders in the church, and I got saved as a young kid. But once we moved away from that neighborhood, I didn't have that consistency in developing my spiritual walk. And so I slid away. And then it was in 2010, I was in a romantic relationship I had no business being in. And
Mm.
this family, the mother was very involved in some, like satanic stuff. And long story short, practicing witchcraft and things like that. And the Lord just blew the whole thing wide open supernaturally and delivered me out of that relationship. And it was then that I really came to see the Lord for myself. Like it was that
Mm.
encounter where I didn't need a preacher to tell me. I didn't need my friends' parents to tell me. Like I met God face to face, and there was nothing no one else could tell me differently about him existing. And so it was then that I gave my life to Christ and started on my journey. And then he just began to, like, I learned to hear his voice, and he just began to show me going into ministry. And of course, I fought it. Because I'm like, Lord, because it wasn't just ministry, it was like seminary and all of that. And I'm like, Lord, more school? Like, I did medical school and all of this stuff, like, really, more school? Like, that was literally my conversation with the Lord. And I said, okay, if you want me to do this, then you're going to have to open up my work schedule. Because, I was working as a physician. You got to open up my work schedule. You got to provide the finances. I'm not taking out another loan. Like, I literally, and sure enough, Latricia, he did all. It was just amazing. Like I found the school. I ended up going to Alliance Theological Seminary, which is now closed, NIAC, but I went there. It was wonderful. And then just went on that way. And then the life purpose coaching again came when I got delivered from that situation. One of the first books I ended up reading was The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren.
Mm.
I'm sure you know. And that
Yep.
book, oh my goodness, was life changing for me at that moment in my life where God was just healing my wounds and I was heartbroken over the loss of this relationship because the guy wasn't bad, but the family was crazy. And it was just speaking about purpose, and all of the things Rick spoke about just really hit my heart. And I began to live it for myself. And then I had the burden to help other people start to live that for themselves as well.
And I love that you do so much pivoting around purpose, because like even when we look in terms of like my own little world and branding, marketing, and
Yeah.
we talk about how people will run from pain but walk to pleasure, and we
Right.
usually the messaging kind of goes to either side of that. But
Right.
the one thing that has been found to surpass all of that is a sense of meaning and purpose. When you look at the things that people endure and the things that they tolerate, the things they put up with, the things that they push through, it's not always can I get away from what's uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's what is the purpose, what is the meaning. And when we realize that there is purpose in what it is that we're pressing through,
Yeah.
then like so many of the biblical greats, there is a lot that we can endure and be a
Yes.
testimony to the resilience that's found in Christ,
Yes.
because we lock in on that purpose. But then I also see where people kind of feel like maybe they self-doubt, they have
Right.
identity questions and issues and insecurities and things like that, where they have a hard time seeing that purpose, and
Right.
then they start shrinking
Shrinking
back where God's called them to
to
be
block.
that light, and to elevate the light, right?
Yes, I love that. No, that is absolutely true. I mean, ultimately, my philosophy is we're really built for two. It's very simple. We really have two purposes in life, and then all of our many purposes submit to those two purposes. So the first
Mm.
one is just that we were created to worship, love, and glorify God. Period. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that we were created to love people and love them well. And so everything you do should be oriented towards those two things. Whether you're a brand specialist, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a mother, whether you're a housekeeper, do those things in a way that honor, worship, and glorify God, and show love and serve people, and you'll be fine. And there's just, God will design you and give you different gifts to do what you're supposed to do. And then once we understand that, and like you said, so key, that identity, knowing that you are in Christ, and you don't have to earn it, and you don't have to manufacture it, but you take on the identity of Christ, and simply being adopted in the family of God, you put less pressure on yourself, right? You don't take yourself as serious
I
because
know.
it's not even me doing it. The only credit
Right.
I'll take is that I was wise enough to accept Christ, and even I need the Holy Spirit to do that. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Well, and the thing with that too is like you have so many people that get very much caught up in the vocation
yeah,
and all of these other labels that we take on
yes,
as part of our identity. And it's like you're saying, okay, distill that down. What is your true purpose in life?
yeah,
And I think realizing that
yeah,
gives us a sense of freedom and a sense of peace to
yeah,
be used however God would desire to use us. Because it's like
correct,
if my job went away
yeah,
tomorrow, it's not going to change who I am in Christ, and it's not going to change those two things that you said, that the core purpose
yeah,
of my existence, that doesn't change. It
exactly.
just changes direction,
Correct.
right?
The calling changes. That's what it is. You just have different callings in different seasons. So in one season, you may be called to just mother and nest and raise your kids, and that's great. Another season, you may be called to be, a real estate agent. But whatever the calling is, just do it in a way that points to those two things.
So I'm curious, and I know I might be throwing a bit of a curveball question here. How often do you have people that come to you and they have maybe this ailment or that, they've got all of these different health issues or things that are going on,
Yeah.
and you're looking at it like, I know this is what you're feeling, and
Yeah.
I know this is what you're telling me, but then you're seeing some of those layers.
Oh my goodness, all the time, Latricia, all the time, especially in our patients with addictive behaviors and
Mm,
our patients with mental health, a lot of back pain, believe it or not. There's been studies that have shown that people who have back pain, it can be related to bitterness and unforgiveness. And there's like write ups about
mm,
this. And so all the time you hear people talking, and you got to keep your medical hat on. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I wish I could just take them to the back and just do some like coaching or just listening more to their story. Of course, there's very rarely time for that. But sometimes I do have time where I can kind of sit with people and hear a little bit more, and they just begin to have like this cathartic session, kind of releasing everything. They may start to cry in front of you, and then you kind of get a little bit more to the root. You can't fully address it, but at least open the can of worms so they begin to think about the other things besides just physical ailments.
I love that so much because I mean I've been one that like I've seen so much in medical over the years from particularly where I grew up. My mom was always sick. She was always in and out of the doctor's offices and the hospitals and stuff like that. And it was always another diagnosis and another medication. And I'm like, man, there were so many things that I know for her like stemmed from her childhood
Mm,
and her teen years that were like major traumas and things that she still carried. And it's like I know I've wondered many a times over like how different could life have been
yeah.
if those things were really addressed. And that's
Yeah.
where I particularly have a love and a passion and a fondness and an admiration for what you're doing,
Mhm.
is because I look at so many people where they have this amazing God-given potential
Yes.
and they're stuck living lives that might be inundated with pain or depression,
Yeah.
despair, hopelessness.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happens when there's a shift? And then, like, with what you're talking about, with them understanding, no, they do have purpose and that hasn't changed. They are loved and that hasn't changed.
Right.
And all of these things. And then, like, they shift
Mhm.
into that identity and just take off
Yes.
running in the
Absolutely.
fullness of life.
Yes, no, absolutely. I totally agree. So many people are stunted and so much talent and so many gifts not developed because of circumstances like your mom in childhood or teenage years. And it's you feel like you want to do more and you want to save everyone, and it's just hard when you can't, like it's heartbreaking to see. I totally agree. Yeah.
So you had told me that you were looking to launch, and I've already seen the site and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like so excited to see it. But spilling the tea, life purpose coaching, you're
Yes.
looking at soon enough. I mean, and I know you got to tell me before about like some of the people that you're already working with in office where you're already doing the purpose coaching. You're just taking it and
Yeah.
making it available to a broader audience. So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Spilling the Tea life coaching services officially to launch April 30th of 2026 is really just an organization to do just what we're talking about, help people to walk in the freedom and fulfillment of living their purpose. I truly believe that of course, you can live a life and you can be successful in your gifts and your talents, and you can have favor with the Lord, but I truly believe you cannot be completely fulfilled unless you're walking in your purpose. That's when you really
Mm.
experience that abundance of life that the Bible talks about. And so we just want to walk alongside you and help you to not only be intentional about knowing that you have a purpose, first knowing that you have a purpose, because so many people don't think they have a purpose, as Latricia talked about. They think, because of the background that they've come from, the mistakes they've made, the kind of life they're living, that their purpose is gone. But it's really to just show people that no matter what you've done, where you've come from, God still loves you and you are designed for a purpose that never goes away, and to help you to hone in on that purpose. We're not going to tell you what your purpose is. Only you and God know that. But it's to kind of give you some context clues, give you some things to think about, be your accountability partner in discovering that purpose and taking off, as Latricia said, into what God has designed you to do. So it's 7 to 8 weeks of coaching. I'm going to start out doing one on one or maybe groups, depending on the amount of people that come in. And we meet weekly. We go through a curriculum and just help you discover the wonderful person that you are a little bit more.
That is so great, especially when it comes to like having a good coach. I was actually listening in on a session that was being hosted by these people who, I mean, they're
Mhm.
freaking high level business coaches, right? Like they're coaching businesses that are in the multi millions into the billions. And they were talking about their own journey and
Yeah.
how they went so long,
Yeah.
in earlier years, like, no, we're smart, we'll figure it out, we don't need a coach. And then they realized, oh crap, we need a coach, and they made that investment into getting a coach, realizing that like
Yeah.
a good coach is going to help you to identify blind spots and see
Yeah.
things that maybe you weren't able to see or weren't ready to see.
Right.
like shorten that curve there, that
Yes.
it takes you to kind of like get around to that point. And I love that you're helping people with being able to get back to a place of being able to understand their purpose,
Yes.
because it's like when they lock in on that, I tell people all the time, I'm like, there's so much to be said about having clarity and conviction in anything that we do. And
Yes.
especially for those that are like entrepreneurs or people who are in business or in ministry and they're out looking to make waves. Well, if you don't really have clarity of purpose,
That's right.
you don't really have stability. And then, like, I do a lot of martial arts training. We say where there is no stability, there's no power,
Mm,
right? And it's like, man, when you get to a place of having stability or a sense of security in your God given purpose and
ex-
identity,
yeah.
now you're standing in a position of power that
Exactly.
you can speak and operate with clarity and conviction.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's, I love, tell me again what you said they say in the martial arts. I want to remember that. Where there's no stability, there's no power.
Where there's no stability, there's no power.
Yes, so good.
Yep. But you look at like here, I'm going to take it back a few steps. I think just if we may,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to take it back a few steps in what you were talking about ditching abandonment, and we were hitting on like so often there are things that we don't even realize might be sabotaging our efforts, and I look at that and I see how often with so many people they're like these powerhouse individuals,
Mm-hmm.
but the enemy is like bombarding them,
Right.
right? Might be
Yeah.
bombarding their thoughts,
Yeah.
might be bombarding their schedule, might be devouring their finances or whatever as
Mhm.
a way to like knock them off
Yeah.
balance.
Exactly. No, all the time. And part of part of progressing, part of becoming who you are supposed to be in your purpose is self-awareness. And so many of us are not self-aware. We're very quick to your point about your sister and reading in the book, and you said, "Oh, this would be great for my sister." You know, very, very unaware that
Oh,
no, this would
completely.
be great for you. But that's such a common theme in our lives that we just lack awareness of our own selves. And it's hard to look at yourself, right? It's hard to look at your flaws and your faults and really look and see, like, wow, I'm a little messed up. But even in all of that self awareness, there was a book, and I'm actually going to talk to you about having this gentleman on as a guest. He's kind of like, this is my seminary professor. He's like an informal mentor to me, but he has a ministry, as I mentioned, called Soul Care. And in the Soul Care, he says that self awareness is the gateway to healing, to inner healing. And
Mm.
let me tell you, that thing stuck with me because it's so true. You have to be willing to face yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to be able to heal and to be able to develop into your purpose and all that you're called to do. So absolutely.
Well, and I think personally, some one of the things that I've had to take note of over the years is that I've worked to become increasingly self-aware, right? I think personally I've had to watch tendencies towards being like self-deprecating and having to discern,
Yeah.
right? Like cuz sometimes we're like we say we're trying to be self-aware but we're really just like tearing ourselves down, and it's like no, you got to have there has to be grace, there needs to be honesty,
Correct.
but like there should be a little bit of grace there too, but it's like the honesty, grace, accountability. How do
Right.
we find
That
how do
balance.
we
Yeah.
how do we find that balance? One of the things that I think is great about self-awareness is it actually opens up, I love that you said it's a doorway to healing,
Yeah.
and it can actually be a place that is very empowering. I think sometimes people have a hard time separating it
Yeah.
from being self-deprecating or
Yeah.
tearing themselves down, and
Yeah.
it's really not any of that. I
No.
think self-awareness is like saying, okay, I recognize that I have a tendency to do this. You can bring it to God, to a place of saying, God, why do I
Yeah.
there were a lot of things. I used to have a lot of disordered eating patterns,
Mm.
depression, anxiety, all of these things. And
Mm-hmm.
I got to a place when I was going through my own health journey with like trying to get my eating on track, where I was like taking
Mm.
that to God and saying like, why do I,
Mm.
and then it was like, he helped me to see, okay, you're actually eating at this time and compulsively overeating because you're still dealing with, root issue, right? Insert root issue.
Yes, yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that you said that self-awareness is like also a way to lead to empowerment. And again, bringing things to God, like another avenue to connect to God and to lean on Him and to just use Him to help you through.
So one of the things I want to hit on, if you don't mind, when it comes to the life purpose coaching, a lot of the people that I work with, they're entrepreneurs, they're people who are in business, they're the go-getters, but some of them wrestle with repeatedly feeling stuck
Mm.
or repeatedly feeling like they just can't, get over this mountain or whatever it might be. How often would you say it is that people in that situation are really wrestling with those kind of underlying issues that maybe it would be good to walk through with a life coach? There are a lot of people, there are courses
Yeah,
galore.
yeah,
There are systems, there are methods, there are
yeah.
processes. Yet you have a lot of people that are still stuck.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the things that I've taken note of is like if they've got all the systems that
Mm-hmm.
should be working,
Mm-hmm.
then what internal thing or what alignment issue, whatever it might be, okay,
Mm-hmm.
is it that's keeping them in that place? And so I think a lot of times people like maybe it's the life purpose, maybe their identity, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a hard time stepping into the
Mm-hmm.
fullness of what they could be because they're not detecting those hangups. So that might not be the best question to ask. I don't know.
No, I think, but I think you kind of answered it.
If I articulate it better.
Yeah, no, no, no. I get it, but I think you're answering, but I think it's just as you say. They're not tapping it. So they're doing systems like almost like a robot, right? Like you can
Right.
step one, step two, A, B, C, but we're not robots. So then there are, as you said, those internal things, the same thing you mentioned, the root issues that aren't being addressed. And so you can play the part of being the machine, but in the end, the person has to catch up with the machine, if that makes sense. You have to
Mhm.
deal with your root issues or your traumas that you haven't addressed because that's still running in the background and still influencing the overall operation of how everything works. So yeah, you kind of answered it.
Okay. All right. So, working with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who are in business, people who are very charged, they're like the go getter types. I
Mm-hmm.
also see a lot of them that are silently suffering
Mm-hmm.
and feeling stuck
Mm-hmm.
in different places where they already have the systems, they already have the methods, they've bought into freaking every course on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you say are some of the things that they could possibly be doing to
Mm-hmm.
get themselves to a place to make those internal shifts that help them to really like
Mm-hmm.
dial in with who it is they've been made to be?
Yeah, I think people, the entrepreneurs, the go-getters, the type A, those people have uh, they have mastered, just as you said, systems and processes. So they know A, B, C, D, one, two, three, four, north, south, east, west, almost like in a robotic sort of way. It's plugging in this particular thing into a formula and it works. But in the end, we're human beings. We're not machines. We're not robots. And so, although you may have the system down, you still have the internal part of you. You have a human being and your thoughts and your traumas and your unprocessed wounds that are working in the background and influencing what's going on. So let's say, even if you have this entrepreneur and they have the best formula to, make their business a success. But if within their mind, they've been told as a child, you're never going to be anything, or you've gone through an abusive situation, that is still influencing how that person operates, even more than the system that's lining up lining up, that's the system that is going on perfectly. And so you have to reconcile the two. Some of the things are to deal with your traumas from the past. Recognize that all of us have traumas. I think if we start on that level playing ground, every one of us have some level of trauma in some way, some more than others, but starting out with recognizing that we all have something we have to deal with, and then being intentional about looking into those things, whether it be with a professional such as a therapist, a trusted spiritual advisor, a wise family member. And then, as we've been talking about, getting to the root of those things. But you can't present a system one way and the person is broken. You want to reconcile the two together as a whole, and then it works in tandem in a good way.
Well, another thing that I've taken note of is when we talk about people being stuck,
Yeah.
right? is not just stuck with maybe revenue or scaling or anything like that, but internally stuck where I know I have met people
Yeah.
who are in one moment talking about the $10 million year that they had last year as far as like what they made,
Hmm.
oh, I made 10, and then on the flip side of that, just understanding that depression is a way of life, right? And it's like, what are we actually defining as life success?
Exactly.
Are we really being purpose focused enough that we are operating in who God made us to be?
Hmm.
And are we allowing ourselves to find fulfillment in the work that we're setting our hands to?
Right. I think so many people don't. I think people will do businesses, they'll do certain jobs to survive or to affirm themselves or to find value versus living who they are and satisfying those two things that we talked about, which is glorifying God and loving people. So I think we do have to redefine what success is. It's not money, it's not titles, it's not power. It's doing those two things, glorifying God and loving people. And when you do those things, the revenue doesn't matter as much, the title doesn't matter as much, the appearance to others doesn't matter as much, because there's a deep satisfaction in doing what you were designed to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
That is so good. And so I feel like over the years, I've ever shifted, and I would say even gone deeper into
Hmm.
the intentionality of which clients I say yes to in
Hmm.
taking on and which ones I decline and happily refer to someone else, not because they're bad people or
Yeah.
because they're wrong, but because I'm like, okay, I only have so much time here on earth. I want to make as much impact as possible.
That's a,
And I know that for me in the seat that I sit in, it's like, well, how do I increase the impact that I'm getting to make by helping the people that I'm working with increase the impact
that's
that
right.
they're here to make?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think when we get a hold of those things where
Yes.
we understand the purpose in even the calling that God has set us to, when we get that clarity,
Yeah.
then we're able to better discern what actually is and isn't a good opportunity and what
Right.
is and isn't in alignment
Right.
with what he's called us to. And it's like when we start to have that clarity, it's like, man.
Yeah. So good. Oh, yeah. Because there's what? Good choices and God choices. They're always good choices, but what is the God choice? I love that.
So when it comes to busy professionals,
Hmm.
busy moms, and just busy people, right? I think one of the things that we often have a hard time discerning is between self-sacrifice
Hmm.
and self-neglect. And that's where you see a lot of people that maybe should be getting care, aren't
Hmm.
getting care, should be getting coaching, aren't getting coaching.
Hmm.
What are some things that you normally see people going through that indicate, no, they probably should kind of push pause and get that added help?
Yeah. When you, especially for people who are helping people, people in helping for professions, people who are just by nature giving of themselves, when you start to see them becoming very resentful of what
Mm,
they normally would enjoy doing or resentful of helping, then you need to take a step back, because it means that you're doing things out of maybe like people pleasing or obligation, and the love of doing it is no longer there. So definitely being resentful. Definitely also, what if someone is experiencing burnout? If you're really doing an assignment that you're supposed to do or assigned to a person or a role, and you're doing it in a way that is healthy and balanced, and as you talk about giving yourself grace, you really shouldn't be burned out. We become burned out when we take on more or do more than we're supposed to do, and we develop this savior complex, right? We think we're Jesus and we're supposed to be everything to everyone, and Jesus didn't go to everyone and do everything for everyone. So, burnout, fatigue, resentment, bitterness, those are all some symptoms where you need to sort of step back and say, you know what, wait a minute. I have to now even the scales and take care of me so I can better take care of other people.
mm. That I love that because like I know like especially it was something that I locked in on as a young mom was noting that like how often I would see other moms that just kind of like, well, they were so busy with the kids, they were so busy with the household and stuff like that they let their health go.
Yeah,
It might have been their physical health, their emotional health, their mental health, could be spiritual health,
yeah,
right? We just kind of keep putting ourselves off and I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then the crash. I know I watched my mother-in-law at one point where she like she was the most loving woman that I have ever met in my life. She was
Wow.
the most self sacrificing, the most giving. She was generous in every way. And I remember watching her go through some serious issues with her health where her husband actually had to tell her, like, hey, you got to stop and pull back from some things just because she was so eager to be of help that she wasn't getting a place to actually just like recharge
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
be like to focus on letting herself be restored.
Right. And sometimes that wanting, I mean, we have to really too, so a lot of times behind people who are very eager to help, there's some sort of people pleasing dysfunction. And we have to get into why are you trying to please everyone? How are you trying to get affirmation from these people or from being viewed a certain way? Not that there aren't people who are genuinely nice and helpful,
Right,
but
right.
many times there's people pleasing behavior and then there's like a dysfunction or a root behind that as well, so you just have to be careful.
Yeah, there was a book that I read. I can't remember what the book was, but it was one of those things that kind of hit me. And I wouldn't say it was necessarily in her case, but I know, like,
Hmm.
for me, even with like having a hard time saying
Yeah,
no,
right.
being the first one to say yes to everything,
Yeah.
that as much as we would put it out there to come off as being selfless, that there's actually a selfish
Yeah,
element to it, where it's that we're really doing it because we're afraid that if we don't say yes, that people aren't going to like us,
that's
they
right.
are, or they're going to think something different of us.
Yeah.
And so it's more our own like self-preservation or preservation of our own
Yeah.
ego, maybe. It probably sounds mean putting it that way. No, like, oh, ego,
Yeah.
but like it's a personal feeling that we're having that's like,
Yeah,
that's not really the right reason to say yes.
exactly. No, absolutely. We always have to check our motives, right? um
Yeah.
Behavior is one thing, but what's the reason, what's the motive behind what you're doing? And I've had God deal with me with that a couple of times where it's like, why are you doing this? You have to face yourself. Yeah.
So one of the things that we had talked about before that I really loved was you sharing a little bit more about some kind of interactions that you'd gotten to have with people who were maybe coworkers, people who were working in the office, and they
Hmm.
were struggling to find that sense of fulfillment. And hearing how you encouraged them,
Hmm.
particularly in going back to like their passion, their voice, their true calling.
Hmm.
What would you say are some of the shifts that you've seen as people lock in on that?
When people really lock in on their purpose, what they were created to do, not what, their parents told them to do, not what society defines that they should be doing, but what they know within the core of their being that they're supposed to be doing in a way that honors and glorifies God, there's such a sense of joy and peace. It's like literally the light bulb comes on and you see like just their whole countenance change, the weight goes off, and they flourish. They literally flourish, and it's such a fulfilling feeling for me. I'm not doing it all the time formally through my program, but even just as you said, coworkers or family members. I'll give an example. She's like a niece to me now because it's my nephew, my favorite first nephew's girlfriend, and everyone kept telling her, why don't you go into nursing? Why don't you go into nursing? It's stable, medical is stable. You'll always have a job. And, she went and she was taking the courses and she wasn't doing well and she wasn't happy. And I just went to her and I said, what do you want to do? What are you supposed to be doing? I don't think this is what it is. What do you like? And we had a couple of times where she just told me, she said, you know what? I want to be an event planner. And I said, you do have an eye for beauty. Whenever I go to you guys' house, you've decorated the place nice. Whenever she's hosted us, it's like this beautiful presentation. I said, then why don't you go for it? Everybody said, nursing is whatever. I said, I'm in medicine. And yes, you will always have a job, but you're not happy. You're not even doing well in the classes. And so she went on, she did the courses for event planning, wedding planning, totally different person. Aced everything, knocked it out, got an internship, was hitting the ground running, started her business. Why? Because this was what God had designed her to do. It's very noble to be in medicine, yes, but everybody can't be in medicine. Everyone is not
Right.
designed to be in medicine. And so she's one of my greatest success stories because I just saw how far away she was from what she was designed to do and what she enjoyed. And when she tapped into it and let go of the pressure of trying to conform to what her family and what society was saying, she was deeply fulfilled, and just the joy, even to this day, is
Mhm.
just it's wonderful.
Can we just like replicate you and make sure that there is a Tanisha in every town across the US?
Oh, you are so, y'all, she's my favorite.
When I look at that, it's like, okay, for me, I grew up hearing a lot of these ideas that like you can't make money in creative. It's,
Yeah,
all of that.
yeah.
And I tend to do pretty well with both being creative, but also working in things that are more structured, but I come alive in the creative,
Mm,
right? So like I went personally because of hearing all that growing up and wanting to distance myself as far as possible
yeah.
from poverty. I wanted to have security. I wanted to be able to do I was going to be the lady boss that was going to do all the things, right? And I was like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get the degree. And
Yeah.
I started off as a business major, did better than I thought I was going to do. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going legal. I'm going to become an attorney.
Wow.
And praise God, he intercepted with my husband. And, I did get my degree as a paralegal, but I did not go to law school. And
Okay.
I ended up working as a paralegal, still have great relationships with the attorneys that I worked for.
Mhm.
But I also realized I'm like, wow, like what did he save me from? Because I was running in a direction
Yeah.
where I thought I was doing what I needed to do to achieve my own sense of security. Now, I was not walking with God at the season of my life that I was trying to pursue that.
Got
And then, like, here, hindsight, I look at it, it's like, how many people
it.
are
Yeah.
stuck living lives that they hate
Yeah.
because they're working jobs
Yeah.
that they hate because they're looking to themselves as provider as opposed to God as provider.
Ooh, come
And then looking at it saying, okay, instead of me being worried about where my bread's going to come from, my clothes, my all this, that, and the other, God, what did you craft me to do?
on.
How did you craft me to step in and help, to bring value, to bring light into the world with what you set my hands to? And you look at the power and potential of people like the young woman you were just talking about,
Yeah.
where now, as opposed to her maybe being dimmed herself
Yeah.
with the light that she carries
Yeah.
because she's clocking in every day at something that's just taken the life energy out of her,
Yeah.
she's now going out and bringing more light into the world by living vibrantly
Yeah.
with this enthusiasm and passion for what she does, making things beautiful, creating beautiful experiences for other people. And
Yeah.
it's like, man, could you imagine what would happen if more people stepped into that, realizing like my job is not to figure out how to provide for me. Like we all contribute, we all work, and sometimes we work a job that may not be our favorite, that makes room for us to do those things outside of work. And sometimes we work the job that brings those things into the workplace.
Yeah.
But I think, man, like, what would happen if the place that we were operating from, that base that we were operating from, shifted
Yes.
into how we're making those decisions? Because
Wow.
those are some huge life decisions.
Huge. Yes. No, girl, you don't need to say anything else. Drop the mic. Absolutely. You know, the point about, instead of us trying to be provider, allowing God to be provider, right? Because of course, just as you said, there's nothing wrong with taking a job to survive and provide for yourself, but that job doesn't have to necessarily be your purpose. And you can carry the two. You can be walking in your purpose and having a job that provides as well, and just being practical and realistic, but still not relying on that job and
Mm.
mistaking it for your purpose. So I absolutely love that. I think the world would be so much better if people adapted that perspective, but we're just not taught that, right?
No, we're not. Well, I actually went. I was at my dentist yesterday,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, I could have just hugged the man as we were just having conversation here. I was sharing with him, I'm working on a painting, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." And I was like, "Well, yeah." I showed him a picture of what's in process, and he started telling me about his daughter, and his daughter is 12,
Mhm.
and he's like, "She's so artistic,
Wow.
she's so creative." He's like, "I'm really hoping that she pursues that.
Oh,
If we can get her private lessons or whatever." And I'm like, you know what? I'm looking at my daughter. She's 16, and even when she's looking at like her course selections for high school, I'm like, are you taking art? Are you taking, because she is so good at it, but not just so good at it, she genuinely loves it.
really?
And I think we've had too many years of too many people bringing this message out there that seeks to diminish the creative, especially like it's not as important or whatever, but it's like, oh, creating beauty, like God is a very creative God. And that was the first thing he did is like in the beginning, God
Yeah,
created,
that's
and
it.
it's like when you look at people, I look at some people, I'm like, man, whether it's dance,
Mhm.
whether it's healing, medicine,
Yeah,
you have an, you have an eye for,
yeah,
and, and much wisdom for it, with somebody who does painting or sports, whatever, it's all room to bring glory to God in just the amazing way that he fashioned his creation.
yes.
And like, could you imagine seeing more people just genuinely? It's not a competition. Am I better than this person or that person? Am I enough? No, no, bring your gifts.
Bring your gifts. One body, different parts, all important. Absolutely. The world would be a much better place, believe me. Much better. I love that about your dentist daughter. Love it. Because he's the exception. Many parents don't have that perspective, unfortunately. Yeah.
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 Well, and I think too, people mean well,
Yeah.
right? They
Oh,
mean well, but
yeah.
one of the things, kind of a little sidestep, but along that note, is I remember hearing it was Denzel Washington. He said that the quickest way to kill a big dream is to tell it to a small-minded person, and that's not so much an insult to the people around you; it's just understanding
Mhm.
that like we have each been gifted with a dream, a passion, a purpose, a vision, and we there's with that a sense of duty to bring it out, right? There's something amazing that happens when we step away from a lot of like what people are saying
Yeah.
and just be who we're called to be.
Be who we're called to be. Yeah.
So for the professionals out there that maybe they did do the thing where they went after the formal vocation or the job that was supposed to be the job, but they've got that passion underneath that they're like, I really need to be doing something. Obviously, like
Mhm.
you're practicing medicine, you're also launching Spilling the Tea life coaching and
Mhm.
doing many other things outside of that. What word of advice would you give to somebody that feels like maybe they waited
Mhm.
a time, but it's still there?
Say to them, it's not too late. As long as you're living and breathing there, it's not too late to pivot back. And that's the name of my curriculum, Pivot to Your Purpose. There's
Ooh.
still time for you to reorient, turn, change back to that purpose. You can still have that job, that is stable, that is traditional, but you're not going to feel that fulfillment. You won't feel whole. You won't feel completely well because it's not your purpose. So I would say to just go back to it, explore it, dive into it, think about it, analyze it, speak to people who are doing what you have a passion or you think you're supposed to do, people in that particular area. Get around into that community and go for it. It's not going to, God is not going to take that away because he didn't make a mistake in putting it in you. It's there for a reason,
Mm.
right?
Can you say that again?
God is not going to take that purpose away. He didn't make a mistake. He didn't say, I called Tanesha to be a healer, but she's over here, being a dancer. So I'm just going to take that purpose away. No, he's waiting for you to pivot right on back to him and begin to walk into that thing. So I would say it is not too late. It doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter where life has taken you. You can still reorient yourself back to your purpose and live it fully and live it well and be the light that you're supposed to be.
Mm, that is so good. Now, I'm going to ask you, for those that are listening that are still struggling to lock in on that purpose or come up with the plan, like how do I get to that place? How do they find you to maybe tap into Spilling the Tea life coaching as an excellent resource for them?
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website. It's www.spillingthetealifecoaching.com. You can also find me at drtaneshalawrencemd.com. I'm also on Facebook, Tanesha Lawrence, Instagram, Still I Rise. What is my Still I Rise 323. But yeah, any of my websites, Facebook, Instagram, would love to, chat with you, see what we can do, how we can work together.
Love that. All right, you guys, as usual, I'm going to make sure that you have all the links that you need in the comments below. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you catch more on building a brand and a business you love. And Dr. Tanesha, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on this call today. I just love so much about you. Like I said, if we could just like replicate you and have just more of you everywhere, I think the world would be a better place.
Thank
So
you. Thank you so
I
much,
am
Patricia.
I am so excited to see what's going to come out of that launch for spilling the tea. It's going to be freaking amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. I just love talking to you. You're also a powerhouse yourself. And I just thank you for what you're doing, for the opportunity, and yeah, for your platform as well.
Thank you so much. All right, you guys, we're going to cut out. You guys keep an eye out for Dr. Tanesha and the world changing that she is up to. All right, you guys take care. Bye.
Bye.